When I got off the plane back here in Georgia from being in California, the first thing I said, and mark it because it's never going to happen again, wow, this humidity feels really good. And I tell you, I brought back a little bit of the dust in my vocal cords from California. Yeah, the humidity does feel much better on the vocal cords. So I ask you the question today, and guys, I'm going to move in the booth. I just have to move. I'm feeling moved internally and externally. Who is it in your life that raises you up? Who is it in your life that plays the role of the presence of God, that reminds you who you are when you have forgotten? Who is it when you're on your knees that's the first person to get on their knees beside you and remind you who you are? But perhaps the better question we need to be asking today, rather than who raises me up, is who are you raising up as the presence of God? As the ambassador and the emissary of God, how are you lifting another human being on this planet, even one, but maybe more? What are you doing to be the voice of God, the heart of God, the hands of God, the feet of God, and the heart of God? You know, we're all living on a spectrum. As a human race, we are on a spectrum. And on the polar opposites, it is absolutely polar opposite. On one side of this spectrum is the notion and the consciousness, it's all about me. Anybody recognize that? Certainly not in the mirror, but maybe it's somebody else. It's all about me. On the other side of that spectrum is it's all about everyone else. And that maybe looks a little bit more refined, but the reality is both polar opposites are a manifestation of the human ego, which has absolutely taken God out of the equation. And when that happens, when we get to one side or the other out of balance, is when suffering happens. Has anybody noticed that suffering is happening on the planet? It's happening in the nation, and it's happening for some people sitting here today. We want to come into a place of balance. You see, we're in a constant state. This is our job as spiritual students, to find the balance, to be dancing left, right, to find that place of equanimity, that place of harmony. Yes, it is about me, but it's not all about me. It is all about the oneness. I bring them to the center, I bring myself to the center, and somehow we find peace. But it takes a dance. And what does dancing take? It takes consciousness. It takes awareness. We're constantly in that balancing act, and it means we must stay awake. Anybody fall asleep lately? Recently? Am I the only one? The human race has fallen asleep. And as a collective, I believe, this is my assessment and my assessment only, we are very dangerously close to unconscious. And we've forgotten the dance. We've forgotten the steps. And unfortunately, what we have gotten to is on the left side, or I guess it's the right side there for you. It's all about me. Out of a sense of judgment, a sense of competition has emerged. Out of a sense of needing to win. I need to be right. I need to be justified. I need to conquer. I need to be better than. I need to be smarter than. I need to be more attractive than. Whatever it is, we've set up an unconscious competition what has put us squarely on it's all about me. And suffering is happening. When we find that healthy state, it's a place of harmony and balance. But we've got to stay conscious and stay awake. You know, the talk title today is Be the Reason. Say that with me. Be the reason. And then you get to fill in the blank. Be the reason, fill in the blank. For me, I'm going to fill it in with be the reason somebody heals. Be the reason somebody overcomes. Be the reason somebody else wins. Be the reason somebody else triumphs. Be the reason somebody else succeeds. You fill in the blank, but be the reason. Another way of saying be the change. How many basketball fans do we have here? Yeah. One thing I love to follow sports, and I'm not a great basketball player, but I love to play the game as well. But the greatest basketball players are not measured by the number of points that they make. We think, oh yeah, they're great because they make a lot of hoops, but they're also measured by another stat. What is it? The number of assists that you make. The number of assists is equally held in value as the number of baskets you make. The greatest players of all time are absolutely measured not just by their baskets, but by how they are helping their teammates score. Everybody on the team is elevated when you have people that make the assist as important as the score. What would life be like? I have a question. Put the next slide up there. And ask this with me. Please read it. What would life be like if we measured success not only by our achievements, but by the number of people who succeeded as a result of our assistance? What if we measured humanity and our earthly journey and our earthly walk and our own success by the way others triumphed because they crossed our paths? We talk about the intersection here. Your path has met my path. And if you are not more of you as a result of having crossed my path, I have missed the opportunity for God to happen. So many people have compassion and love and kindness and generosity, but it's transactional. I will only give to get something back in return. The greatest lovers on the planet are the ones that give unconditionally. Here is my love, and maybe your life is a little bit better because you crossed my path. That's following the example of the Christ. That's following the example of Jesus and all the great prophets. They gave for the sake of giving, not from the sake of receiving. And so I ask us, is your spirituality transactional? And I'm just going to call it out. With the state of the government that we're in, the nation that we're in, there's a lot of transactional. I will only be kind if they're kind. You've wasted the whole unity movement. I will only be loving if they are loving in return. Perhaps my love is the exact assistance somebody needs to wake up. Perhaps my love is the moment that somebody who's in a lot of pain and in a lot of hurt will go, maybe there's a different way. But they never find out if I don't offer it without the expectation of getting something in return. A lot of us on the planet, and it happens in New Thought as well, I just like to call it out as I see it, are so consumed with our own little world, my viewpoint, my way, my religion, my political bent, that we have narrowed the peripheral vision. Unity is a peripheral 360 vision. When we talk about oneness, I cannot make exceptions to where I find the face of God. But it's gotten pretty narrow. The peripheral vision has been exhausted, set aside as not important, and we are missing the calls and the cries for help. We are missing the calls and the cries for the need, which is what the Pharisees did in the Bible. And then Jesus came along and said, open up the vision. He crossed the boundaries, he crossed the borders, he crossed the differences and said, I'm going to go be love in their camp, in their field, rather than judging them. We are called to follow that example. Yes, as a collective, we have lost our ability to see cries for help, and the nation is crying. Churches are crying. People are crying. I'm going to speak really, really candidly today. Since last night, I have heard so much hate, and it breaks my heart that I heard somebody say, darn, they missed. That does not represent my political party, my religion, my spirituality. We miss these things, the cries for help, either out of selfishness, judgment, blind fear, or complete and total unconsciousness. Today, the message is a call to consciousness. It's a call to finding the balance. It's a call to recognizing with a little bit of a screen what's coming out of our mouths. Everything that comes into your head doesn't have to come out your mouth. I'll say it again. Everything that comes into your head does not have to come out of your mouth, because everything that comes out of your mouth it needs to be something that uplifts, that raises the vibration and doesn't just get down into the muck of what is happening. Be the higher vibration. I spent some time on my vacation. You know, when you get away for a good time, you get a chance to think. And there was an NPR program that was on, I was listening to while I was in California. And it was exploring the different levels and vibrations of empathy. And I went, this is exactly that polar opposite. And the host was talking about the difference between cognitive empathy and parochial empathy. Anybody ever heard that term? I'd never heard that term before. Parochial empathy? Well, cognitive empathy is what we're about here in the Unity movement. It is about an intentional, purposeful idea that I am going to seek to understand before I judge. that I am absolutely going to know that there is a story underneath the picture. There is something happening beneath the surface, understanding. Understanding is one of the 12 powers for the Christ to be revealed. That means I must look for what is standing underneath the behavior, good, bad, or otherwise. I must spend some time having the eyes and the ears to find the sense of balance, and not just going, it's all about me, you're a jerk. And I throw rocks at you, and then I go sticks, and the next thing I know, I'm picking up a gun. That's not what we do here. Parochial empathy is empathy disguised, and I see a lot of it. It's basically I only have empathy for the people that are in my tribe. I only have empathy for the people that are thinking the way I think and sharing the way I think. And I've often said from this platform, the person who is kind to you but is not kind to the waitress is not a kind person. The person who is loving to your family members but not loving to somebody outside of your family is not a loving person, plain and simple. Let's call it like we see it. The person who is generous and gentle and compassionate with somebody who thinks like you do in the unity movement but cannot be kind and generous to the Baptist down the street is not a kind, generous, compassionate person. Oh, it feels good. And I often say, and it really ticks people off, if what we do in this room stays in this room, you've wasted your time. Because if it does not go out in the world, that you cannot prove the principles with somebody who drives you crazy, then you can't prove the principles. If you can't be in the midst of darkness and be the light, why are you wasting your time? And so I'm throwing the gauntlet down, and I'm not just doing it as a preaching minister, I'm doing it about my own consciousness. And I hate that I have to admit this. There was a small portion of me last night that felt, wouldn't it be easier? Oh my God, what has become of my heart? It was set aside very, very quickly. But it was a symbol that I'm so tired of the division and the attack that's happening everywhere, both sides of the aisle. And I am really tired if it's happening in my church. And if I'm in the cause of it, let me make public apology that if I in any way have been the cause of disruption and duality and pain, be the first person to come have a coffee with me and let me make amends. There's somebody in the room today that I hurt, and they're back in the room today. My heart is full that they had the guts and the courage to come back into the room today and to be here and to say, let's work this through and let's find love. So I'm asking you and challenging you to be the reason somebody succeeds, not as an alternative to your success. That's the polar opposite. Be the reason somebody succeeds as a component of your success, of your evolving and your becoming, and the water rises in the harbor for everybody. And whose responsibility is it? Answer. I want an answer. That's not a rhetorical question. Good. I want to give you a little story about 4 people that often live in churches all over the country. Their names are everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. There once was an important job to be done, and everybody was sure that somebody would do it. Anybody could have done it, but nobody did it. Somebody got angry about that because it was everybody's job. Everybody thought anybody could do it, but nobody realized that everybody wouldn't do it. It ended up that everybody blamed somebody when nobody did what anybody could have done. You should be more loving. The song we sing is not, let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with you. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin together with me. Why doesn't God send somebody? God did send somebody. God sent you. God sent Donna Stott, Jeannie Bailey. God sent Colleen Martin. God sent even you, Winifred White. God sent you for sure. Say it, sister. Amen. I want to share 3 stories that have impacted my life. You've probably heard them before, but they bear repeating because it's what I think the country and the world needs today. I've worked a lot in my life with special needs children, Down syndrome, autism, and I worked regularly with a school in California. And this is a story that spoke about the exact experience I had at Jesse Baker School. There was a game they were going to play with the school kids, and they said, tie a balloon onto their ankles. And they put a balloon on the ankles of all the children. And they said, on the count of 3, and we say go, the last person with a balloon on their ankle wins and pops. The regular kids, just like us, got into it, and it was violent. Stomp, stomp, pushing and shoving. And pretty soon, one kid won. Woo! And he was happy, and everybody else was crying. And then they went to the Down syndrome kids and gave them the same exact instructions. And the Down syndrome's kids said, 1, 2, 3, go. And they held the balloon. Here, pop it. And when they would pop their balloon, they would cheer. Yes, we did it. And they went all around the whole room until every balloon was popped, and everybody raised their hands and said, yes, we did it. Who's the special needs? And if you think that's just here in the country, let's go across the ocean, the pond in Africa. There's a term that speaks to my heart that I try to live. A bunch of African kids were told, look over there by that tree. There's a whole bunch of fruit. There's a whole bunch of candy, baskets full. And the first kid that gets there gets to have it all. 1, 2, 3, go. Grabbed hands, and all the kids ran and started eating of the feast together as one. The psychologist who was running the experiment said, how can you do that? You could have had all that for yourself. And the kids all said as one, Ubuntu. Ubuntu, an African term that basically means, in a nutshell, I am because we are. I don't exist without the we. I am not here unless you win. It's a lonely, empty place to be the only winner and to deprive the rest of the world. And if you think this is just a human quality, let me tell you a story when I came home. My birds, I love my birds in my yard, and I feed them, and they are hungry this summer. Well, I've been gone for a month, so they had no food. First thing I did when I got home is to put bird food, and I buy the cream of the crop bird food, and I put it in there, knowing it was going to be a while. They were a little bit, had their nose at the joint, until one bird began to find it. Something's here. And Susie and I watched one bird come and land on that bird feeder, and he had his fill. He was, I swear, if birds could smile, that bird was smiling. Well, what happened was not the miracle of the bird finding the food. The miracle is what the bird did after he had his fill. He jumped over to the branch, and he began to have a call. It was a Carolina wren. I've never heard a Carolina wren make this sound. And what we saw was happening was he was telling the whole forest, there's food to eat here. There's food to eat here. Come on, come one, come all, come join. Maybe we need to be a little more bird-brained. Maybe we need to recognize that we live in an abundant universe and there's enough to go around, and that when we share it, there will be loaves and fishes. There will be plenty. Have we forgotten that? I've got mine, but the master teacher Jesus told us, don't store up for yourself treasures in heaven. Mine, mine, mine. Call out to everybody. What we have here is for everybody. Ubuntu. You know, when we're doing this dance, we're never too far from oneness. We're only one breath, one word, one moment away from oneness. And we're also only one moment, one word, and one action away from suffering. All about me. All about me. Stay awake. What we know about someone's life is but a fraction of what their life is. Say that with me. What we know about someone's life is but a fraction of what their life is. Take your hand and put it on your heart one more time. What we know about someone's life is but a fraction of what their life is. Bob Simon, I think, has a new lyric he put out there. Before you judge someone about their anger, ask them about their pain. Before you judge somebody about their anger, ask them about their hurt. There's a huge backstory to every behavior. Mine, yours, everyone's. We never get there if we react and we judge before we listen. I'm going to invite the band to come back up. Today, I am calling for a revolution, an internal revolution, one that will require deeper parts of yourself. Call it the Christ, call it the Atman, call it the Tao. I don't care what you call it, but it exists within you. It is a part of you that is willing to risk more, to be more humble, to be more vulnerable, to be more strong and courageous enough. It's a reality that we're only going to get to because our judgments and our fears and our wounds will not allow us to get to the level of oneness that we must get to. Plain and simple. And I'm asking you to be really honest with yourself as I was honest with you here today. Whoa, that popped into my head. Is that going to get us to oneness? Nope. Oh, I'm feeling that. I'm thinking that. Is that going to get me to unity? No, it's not. Then I need to process it. I need to own it, put it out there, and release it and let it go. Be the first one to step back. Be the first one to have a good enough sense, the heart enough at the depth to step back and go, let me think before I speak. Let me understand before I judge. Let me be present before I push you aside. I'm going to a little music underneath this story. We'll do the song in a minute. It's another story that you've heard 100 times, but I'm going to tell it because it really speaks to where we are today. I was on a tour of hell. We're kind of on a tour of hell right now in the nation. And I saw row after row of tables laden with platters of sumptuous food, a banquet table. Yet the people seating around the table were emaciated. They were pale. They were moaning in hunger. Every person had a full spoon, but both arms were splinted with wooden slats, so they could not bend their elbows, and they couldn't bring the food to their mouth. And then I went to heaven, surprised to see the very same setting I saw in hell. Row after row of long tables of food, a banquet table. But in contrast, the people in heaven were sitting peacefully and quietly talking with each other, well fed from their sumptuous meal. And as I came closer, I was amazed to discover that there too, each person had his arms splinted with wooden slats that prevented them from bending their elbows. As I watched perplexed, one man picked up his spoon and dug it into the dish before him. And then he stretched across the table and he fed the person across from him. The recipient thanked him and returned the favor by leaning across the table to feed his benefactor. And I suddenly understood heaven and hell offer the same circumstances. Heaven and hell offer the same conditions. The critical difference is in the way people treat each other. Of all of the accomplishments of this community, I think I am most proud of Family Promise and 4 years of distribution of food where people ate. People came through the line that don't think like we think spiritually. They don't look like us. They don't have maybe the same socioeconomic background. Nobody asked them, are you Republican or are you Democrat? Are you independent? Nobody asked about a story, yet kindness said, here, let me feed you. And the greatest moment was when somebody in that line came back after 2 years of receiving food, said, I want you to know I got a job. And here is $400 of gift cards to give away to the people coming behind me. And that person then became a volunteer here. What would life be like if you had as many assists as you had baskets? What would life be like if we truly lived Ubuntu and didn't just give it lip service on Sunday morning? So I ran back to hell to share the solution with those that were trapped there. And I whispered in the ear of a starving man, you don't have to go hungry. Lift your spoon to feed your neighbor. And the man said, you expect me to feed the detestable man sitting across the table from me? I'd rather starve. I'm tired of starving. It's an old song that says we're standing knee-deep in water and we're dying of thirst. It's not hopeless, folks, but we've got to be the ones. We've got to be the reason. We've got to be Ubuntu.